Capitol Hill is up in arms over the debt ceiling fight. According to new reporting from The Hill, both conservatives and moderates are less than pleased about the newly unveiled debt limit bill, leaving party leaders scrambling to shore up votes.
Here to break it down for us is The Hill's own congressional reporter, Mychael Schnell. Good to be with you, Mikey. Can you break it down for us?
Thanks, guys, for having me. Yeah, so essentially what we've been talking about this debt limit, right, for the past 3 months, trying to figure out what's going to happen, how could Democrats and Republicans get on the same page. And for those 3 months, we've been at a stalemate. We've been at a standstill. Both sides are digging in their heels. But we saw some movement this week. House Republicans introduced their debt limit bill. It's their proposal of what to do with the debt limit as we're creeping up on that summer deadline. And essentially what this would do is it would raise the debt limit by $1.5 trillion or until March, the end of March of next year, whichever comes first. And then it also is paired with what Republicans are saying amounts to $4.5 trillion in spending cuts. Of course, this has been something that House Republicans, specifically conservatives, were pushing for during the speaker's race back in January. And so now those concessions that Speaker McCarthy made, they're coming to term, and we're seeing those spending cut proposals. So House Republican leadership is hoping to bring this bill to the floor next week to pass it and then send it to the Senate, where it really has no chance of moving. Obviously, Senate controlled by Democrats. But the only thing is it's not an easy path to 218 votes in the House right now, despite the fact that this was a bill crafted by House Republicans. As mentioned, as you guys mentioned, moderates and conservatives both have some misgivings about this bill. Some are saying that they're leaning no. We've even heard a few say they're a hard nose. There are still negotiations happening behind the scenes to potentially change the text of the bill to bring more House Republicans on board. But the reason why this is crucial is because House Republicans are working with a very slight majority, right? They can only afford to lose 4 votes, assuming that all Democrats vote against it, which Hakeem Jeffries suggested just this week that that's going to be the case. So again, House Republicans are hoping to bring this to the floor next week. It is not a sure thing that it has the votes. There's going to be a lot of wrangling and negotiating happening behind the scenes in the coming days.
Well, meanwhile, President Joe Biden has said that he's only interested in a clean bill to raise the debt ceiling. So even if they are able to hammer out some of these differences within the Republican caucus, what are the chances that anything that goes to the president's desk is going to be signed?
Yeah, so that's another part. The short answer is there's no chance, right? But just to back it up even a little more, when we're talking about this Republican bill, it's not even going to get past the Senate.
Right.
Again, it would be subject to the 60-vote threshold. That would mean that at least 10 Republicans would have to be on board. There's no appetite. I mean, there's no. That would mean that at least 10 Democrats, would have to come on board. There's no appetite there in the Senate. So really, what this bill is being seen as is the opening salvo in what are going to be these really high-stakes negotiations for the debt limit. This is House Republicans' way of saying this is what we want to see in a debt limit and spending cut proposal. This is what House Republicans would put our weight behind. But obviously, the White House is not going to get on board with this. So this is sort of the opening flagpole in the negotiations, and we'll see where we can go from there. The only thing is President Biden and Democrats have been adamant that they want a clean debt ceiling increase. They do not want to see spending cuts. Again, both sides are really digging in their heels. There's no indication of what the answer to this issue will be, which I will say has to come soon, because analysts and experts have been saying that the debt limit, we will hit the debt limit over the summer. Goldman Sachs came out this week and said that based on tax returns that came in, it looks like we could hit the debt limit early June, which is, very early. It's compared to the August-July timeline we were talking about. So lawmakers are going to have to start moving, because there's been a warning that the economic effects of a default, which obviously the U.S. has never experienced, could be cataclysmic. So there's going to have to be some movement here. House Republicans are trying to inch that along. But again, both sides are digging in their heels. So where we go from here remains to be seen.
So is there a sense that from far-right Republicans that they think that these negotiations or what Kevin McCarthy is proposing doesn't go far enough? Is that what it is? And moderates want perhaps a little less? Is that where the disagreement lies? Sort of, yeah. That's essentially, broadly speaking, what the issue is. So there are some conservative Republicans, Matt Gaetz, Chip Roy. They want stricter work requirements for some of these entitlement programs for things like food stamps and things like Medicaid. Social Security and Medicare, though, are not
being touched. They're not included in this bill. So some of those conservative Republicans want the work requirements to be beefed up. But then you have someone like Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who is known to be a moderate within the conference. She's concerned about some energy provisions that are being repealed from the Inflation Reduction Act that House Democrats passed last summer. She said that something like solar energy is really important in her district in South Carolina. So she's voicing some concerns about that. So to get to your point, yes, a lot of the general confines of it is that conservatives want more, moderates want less. But there's one more angle to this, is the fact that this bill is 320 pages long.
Wow.
It was just released this week. There are a ton of provisions in it. It's not just that debt ceiling increase. It's also all of these spending cuts. It's other provisions. I mean, H.R. 1, that massive energy package that House Republicans just recently passed, the entire H.R. 1 is in this bill. So we're talking about a massive piece of legislation here. A ton of lawmakers are still sifting through the details, trying to figure out where they stand on it. But in terms of the ones who have some misgivings, I spoke to some conservative Republicans this week. They're happy with how negotiations are going. They said that Republican leadership is being receptive to some of their requests. So, that's some good optimism that we don't always see on Capitol Hill. But again, in terms of where this goes, they are not at 218 votes yet. So there's going to definitely be more discussions.
Meanwhile, here's what White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre had to say on the matter.
The way to have a real negotiation on the budget is for House Republicans to take threats of default when it comes to the economy and what it could potentially do to the economy off the table. House Republicans need to get to work and stop the delay and put a bill on the floor that's going to avoid default.
So it looks like Republicans have now offered something. And then the other question I had as a follow-up to Karine Jean-Pierre's statement was that last week Speaker McCarthy said that he actually hadn't heard from President Biden. Has that changed?
Right. So the last time President Biden and McCarthy met on this issue, specifically a meeting on the debt limit, was back on February 1st. President Biden has said that he is not going to have another conversation about the debt limit until House Republicans release their annual budget, which they have not done. It was meant to come out previously, but it's been delayed. They've sort of been kicking that can down the road. So, yeah, President Biden and Speaker McCarthy, they've met on different matters. They took part in a St. Patty's Day event together on Capitol Hill. But in terms of meeting specifically on the debt limit, no, they have not. And just recently this week, there was a phone conversation between President Biden, Chuck Schumer, and Hakeem Jeffries. And there was a readout from the White House afterwards. And they called on House Republicans to let's deal with the debt limit. Let's pass a clean debt limit increase. And then we can talk about budget negotiations later. Because, again, that's going to be a thing as we move into the fall when we inch closer to the end of the fiscal year. So, yeah, again, this just gets back to the main idea that both sides are being very adamant about their positions. We're entering into a massive game of chicken that has serious implications for the economy. But again, House Republicans are trying to inch it a little forward, but we'll see if they have the votes to do that.
All right, well, we'll definitely have to hear more about this, Mikey. Thank you for coming on, and we'll be back with more Rising.